Well, welcome to the 700 Club. And speaking of welcomes, a former al-Qaeda terrorist has visited the White House. President Trump hosted Syrian President Ahmad al-sharaa in the Oval Office yesterday.
Well, the president is hoping Syria's leader will pursue peace with Israel and bring long-term stability to the Middle East. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has more.
President Trump called Syrian President al-sharaa a tough guy from a tough place and a very strong leader.
I liked him. I get along with him, the new president of Syria. And we'll do everything we can to make Syria successful because that's part of the Middle East. We have peace now in the Middle East, first time that anyone can remember that ever happening.
Trump lifted decades-old sanctions on Syria after former al-Qaeda terrorist al-sharaa toppled Syrian President Bashar Assad last year, ending the brutal Assad regime. Trump says he also wants to see a lasting peace between Syria and Israel.
We're working also with Israel on, getting along with Syria, getting along with everybody, and that's working amazingly.
In an interview with Fox News, al-sharaa said he doesn't see Syria entering the Abraham Accords with Israel in the near future.
Syria has borders with Israel, and Israel occupies the Golan Heights since 1967. We are not going to enter into a negotiation directly right now. Maybe the United States administration with the President Trump will help us reach this kind of negotiation.
Known in the Bible as Bashan, the Golan Heights was given to the half-tribe of Manasseh. Israel gained control of the Golan Heights in the 1967 Six-Day War. During his first term, President Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. Al-sharaa said he and the president talked about changing Syria's perception and role in the Middle East.
We talked about the president and the future. We talked about the investment opportunities in the future in Syria, and so that Syria is no longer looked at as a security threat. It is now looked at as a geopolitical ally, and it's a place where the United States can have great investments, especially extracting gas.
According to reports, Syria confirmed it would join the global coalition against ISIS, though no announcement has yet been made. Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, Trump's envoy Jared Kushner met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the ceasefire agreement. Kushner is leading talks to secure safe passage for about 200 Hamas terrorists trapped in tunnels on the Israeli side of the Yellow Line. Israeli government spokeswoman Shosh Bedrosian refuted Turkey's claim that they are civilians.
And Turkish propaganda cannot change the fact that they are terrorists. Terrorists who are with Hamas. Even Hamas admits its tunnels are for its terrorists and not for its people.
As details are being worked out for an international security force in Gaza, Netanyahu has stated that Turkish troops will not be included. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, I hope the administration is listening to Israel on this one. And when the spokesman said that the tunnels were for the terrorists and not for the people, that was a direct quote from a leader in Hamas saying, no, the civilians didn't get to shelter in the tunnels during the Israeli strikes. They were designed to be human shields. We were willing to give them up. Our fighters needed those tunnels to move around, and we didn't want them clogged with civilians. That's absolutely horrific ideology, but that's the ideology. Unfortunately, Turkey shares that ideology, and that's all part of the Muslim Brotherhood. So these are very perilous times for Israel. If you thought we were through the war, realize no, that ideology still exists. And you heard it from the incoming president of Syria that no, we can't have peace with Israel. We need the Golan Heights. But from Israel's standpoint, Syria cannot occupy the Golan Heights because from a strategic position, that means they can shell Tel Aviv. They don't even need a rocket to do it. They just have to use an artillery shell. These are incredible statements being made. I hope we all understand the history here and what these various things mean for the long-term stability and security of the nation of Israel. Well, in other news, the Senate voted to reopen the government last night. Well, now it's up to the House of Representatives to end the shutdown for good. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. House members are scrambling to get back to Washington with the hopes of a Wednesday vote to end the longest government shutdown in history. CBN's Wendy Griffith has more.
After weeks of a bitter stalemate, 8 Senate Democrats broke ranks, joining Republicans to help end the historic government shutdown. Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson urging lawmakers to return to Washington immediately to finish the job.
The bill as amended is passed.
The fate of the government is now in the hands of the House, but critics argue the bill does not include the key demand from Democrats to extend Obamacare subsidies and keep insurance premiums from skyrocketing.
The American people have now awoken to Trump's health care crisis. Republicans now own this health care crisis. They knew it was coming. We wanted to fix it. Republicans said no, and now it's on them.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune promised to hold a vote on Obamacare subsidies before the end of the year, which helped sway the 8 Democrats. Still, many aren't buying it.
They did not want to give in. They thought that this is giving up and giving in to the Republican Party. And so there was a widespread outrage on the Democratic side that this is how this shutdown is ending.
The deal would reopen the government and guarantee back pay for federal workers, but there are concerns millions of Americans will still feel the impact even after the government reopens. 42 million Americans who rely on SNAP food benefits are scrambling to keep food on the table, and chaos at the nation's airports continues to grow.
There was no reimbursement or anything, so I had to pay for a hotel. So, yeah, it was madness, craziness.
Experts warn even if the government reopens this week, it could still take days for air travel to return to normal. The FAA has forced airlines to cancel more than 7,000 flights since Friday because of unpaid air traffic controllers calling out sick. President Trump now threatening to replace the controllers not reporting to work and suggesting bonuses to those who've stayed on the job. The president says he'll back the Senate plan.
The deal is very good. We're not going to be giving $1.5 trillion to people that came in from jails and from, the gangs and drug dealers and all of these others that they wanted to be given health care, which would have hurt our health care system.
The Republican House could vote on this as early as Wednesday, offering hope for a breakthrough after more than 42 days of gridlock. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Thank you, Wendy. President Trump has issued pardons to dozens of allies who challenged the 2020 election results, including his former personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and attorney Sidney Powell. Both had claimed rigged election machines cost Trump the election in the state of Georgia. Those claims were denied by Georgia's Republican election officials. Monday's preemptive pardons for more than 70 people protect them from potential federal charges for, quote, any conduct related to their efforts to expose voting fraud. Meanwhile, the president is threatening to sue the British Broadcasting Corporation. Earlier this week, 2 top BBC officials resigned under pressure over a misleading edit in a 2024 documentary. In a letter to Parliament, BBC Chairman Samir Shah admitted the edit to the president's speech on January 6, quote, gave the impression of a direct call for violent action, end quote. Trump called it an attempt to influence last year's election. Well, in the Midwest, an Arctic blast is sweeping across the region from Michigan to Wisconsin. The unseasonable weather taking Chicago residents by surprise. In northern Indiana, lake-effect snow is covering the streets, leaving treacherous driving conditions for commuters and prompting school closures. Some areas are reporting up to a foot of snow. That same winter weather is expected to continue across the country throughout the week, bringing another round of snow to the northeast and freezing temperatures to the south. Well, on this Veterans Day, Americans can learn more about the experience of 2 of the most horrific battles of the Iraq War and the impact on the Marines who fought them. Gary Lane tells us about the new documentary, The Last 600 Meters.
Director-producer Michael Pack believes the urban battles in Iraq made that fight unique compared to previous American conflicts such as World Wars I and II, Korea and Vietnam.
It's a very different kind of war, and we try to depict it from the point of view of the people who fought there. It's called The Last 600 Meters because a Special Forces sniper says I don't make foreign policy. I deliver the last 600 meters of it.
The goal is to make viewers feel as though they're experiencing the firefights alongside the Marines sharing their perspectives. The focus is on the Battle of Fallujah and Najaf, fought in Wadi al-Salam, the world's largest cemetery.
One tomb on top of another in a huge underground catacomb area, and they're fighting in 330-degree heat. The Marines had to go in and come out and have IVs with water in them to rehydrate, and then they got back into the battle. Some of them left IV stunts in their arms so they could more easily hydrate, and it was just a horrific, surreal battle.
Battles like these can leave emotional scars that last for years. Thousands of Iraq combat veterans experience varying degrees of post-traumatic stress. According to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, on average, 23% of Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans experience this pain, and it can range as high as 60%.
You can't go through these battles without being emotionally scarred for life. But I think what we try to do, which I think isn't done enough, is actually to celebrate what they did in battle, not just make them pathetic figures of, worthy of our sympathy, but understand what they did in battle, their heroism and courage, not just their struggles and difficulties.
PAC argues Americans should celebrate veterans' valor and sacrifice, not focus solely on suffering. I'm sure you'd agree that we should honor them not only on Veterans Day, but every day.
I think we need to understand them. We need to know what it means to be in these kind of battles. And I think that would make us also more cautious before sending them to war. We need to understand what war is and what we're asking. I think that's an important thing to do.
Understanding the nature of war and the nation's expectations, celebrating and honoring those who have served. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thank you, Gary. Well, the documentary is available for streaming on Amazon Prime today. Gordon?
If you know a veteran, particularly a veteran of Afghanistan or Iraq, please congratulate them today and honor them for their service. The title of this movie just really rings with me. We're the last 600 meters of foreign policy, and just the extremes that our soldiers went through. And not just on one tour. I live in a military town, and some of the veterans here went through 9, 10, 11 tours. It was called the Forever War. And you look at 9/11, the reason we got into the war, then the faulty intelligence about Iraq, and in that vacuum of leadership, we were forced into leadership in Iraq. And then all of that was under Bush, and then under Obama, he made a campaign pledge to withdraw, and what happens in that vacuum is ISIS comes into being. And then we all know what Biden did in Afghanistan and the horrific problems that happen with that withdrawal. If you're a veteran of those wars, you have to be asking the question, why did I go? Why did I give of my life? Why did I go through these horrific things and see horrific things that are with me to this day? So take time today to honor them, because their sacrifice is very real, and we all need to recognize it and support them.